in the waiting room. Just give everyone a moment to come in from the waiting room. As a reminder, please mute yourself if you're not presenting.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. If everyone could please mute yourself unless you're presenting.
Valerie Shelley, Orchard Gardens.
Thank you. Good afternoon. This is a hearing before the Boston Cannabis Board. Today is Wednesday, April 21st, 2021. Today's hearing is being conducted pursuant to certain temporary amendments to the open meeting law. That is what allows us to meet virtually. Today's hearing is being recorded and will be posted on the City of Boston's website. Before we review some procedural matters, I will introduce Chairwoman Kathleen Joyce.
Good afternoon. My name is Kathleen Joyce. I'm chair of the Cannabis Board, and I'm joined today by my fellow commissioners, Commissioner Lisa Holmes, Commissioner John Smith, Commissioner Darlene Lombos, Commissioner Alejandro Sankian. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to introduce the Boston Cannabis Board's project manager, Jasmine Nguyen.
Thank you. As a reminder, please mute yourself unless you are testifying or presenting. Each agenda item will be called in the order it appears on the agenda. I will then ask who is present on behalf of the applicant or the licensee. You will be given 10 minutes to present. Ms. Nguyen will give you a notice at the 5-minute mark and the 8-minute mark. You will not be permitted to exceed the 10 minutes. Following the presentation, there will be questions from the chairwoman and the commissioners, after which there will be public testimony, beginning with elected officials or their representatives. Testimony will be limited to 2 minutes. You will be muted after 2 minutes. The board will keep open the record until Wednesday of next week at 5 p.m. to allow for additional testimony. Written testimony is given the same weight as spoken testimony. Calling NSAJO Holdings, Inc., located at 50 Clapp Street, Dorchester. This is an existing medical cannabis dispensary license. The request is to remove 2 conditions on the host community agreement. The first is section 22.6, a $40 minimum purchase, and the second is section 22.8, a 2-year moratorium on seeking approval for adult use sales. For the record, the $40 minimum should have never been placed on this license, as it is medical and there is a legal obligation to provide affordable medical cannabis to qualified patients. And the second condition, for the record, this is not an application for a recreational co-located site. However, this would allow the applicant to apply. Who's present on behalf of the licensee?
Hello, Madam Secretary. This is Mike Ross, attorney for the licensee. Hello, Madam Chair and members of the board. Our team is also on the call here. We have Paulie Matthew, who's the general manager of the store, the COO of the company, Alex Hardy is here, and the founder.
Good afternoon.
And the founder, Aidan O'Donovan, is here as well. These events preceded the board, and we're coming back to the board to kind of give you an update on where we are. I have 6 slides just to really quickly orient you to this project, because I don't think as of yet you've seen it. As I mentioned, this was a predecessor to the board matter. Next slide, please. So this is 50 Clapp Street. This is our facility in Dorchester. It was opened as a medical facility January of this year. And those are some images of what it looks like, just to give you a sense of the store and what it's doing right now. We're seeing around 40 customers a day. The average transactions are $115 per transaction, and half of those are occurring online. There were no requirements for this store in terms of D&I. However, we thought it was important just to point out that 89% of our employees, of the 9 employees that work in this facility, are Boston residents, and 67% are persons of color. About $1.2 million was invested in this facility, all union construction. Next slide, please. As the secretary mentioned, we're here because there are 2 conditions in our host community agreement that frankly we never wanted in the host community agreement, but we understood that we kind of had to go along to get along. Just to maybe sum it up in a couple of words, if I could, we really wanted to open, and these were 2 commitments that were placed into our host community agreement. that we did go along with. We've spent the last couple of weeks talking to the community about these changes that we're proposing here today as required. There's the 2-year waiting period. I'm going to walk you through kind of how we kind of got there, and then there's this $40 minimum transaction. I mean, the intent of the $40 minimum transaction was to try to make sure that people weren't coming in and just buying a joint, or so to speak. This is a medical facility. We're not, there are a whole bunch of safeguards in place that prevent us selling to people who would be inebriated. And we can get into that. But the bottom line is that we don't want to force people to purchase more cannabis than they want or that they need to. We certainly don't want to create a situation where someone feels compelled to divert what they're purchasing from our store. We think the $40 minimum transaction does not make sense. And then the 2-year waiting period. This happened at a time when the industry was very early. NSAGAO Holdings was one of the first companies in front of the city, and there was a condition placed on the host community agreement that we wait 2 years before we apply for adult use. If I could just have the next slide, please. We just wanted to kind of walk you through. I mean, if everything went perfectly, we probably could have lived up to a waiting period as originally intended. But as you can see from this kind of complicated slide, it really did not. We were approved in 2018 to open, and we were told that was in the springtime under the predecessor regime. We were told in July that we needed a host community agreement in order to open, and that was, we basically transitioned into the new permitting period at the state level. And there was, at the meantime, the city was still kind of making its way through the creation of the Boston Cannabis Board. So we waited a whole year before that host community agreement was issued. And it was only under those 2 conditions being applied into that host community agreement that we were really forced to accept those. And that was back in July of 2019. So the second we got that host community agreement, we began construction. You can see from July to August, we didn't wait long at all. We went straight through the interior construction very quickly. And then it came down to doing the exterior construction, the exterior work. And as you know, there's a construction moratorium in Boston in the winter months. So we were waiting for the winter months to end, and then the COVID shutdown occurred. All told, there was 17 months in delays that occurred between waiting for the host community agreement and for the delays in construction. That finally brought us to the ability to end the exterior construction and finish that and get our certificate of occupancy and get the CCC final review, and then finally open after final inspections in November, December, and January. So that was, I know it's a lot on one side, but just to give you a sense of, we weren't sitting back at any time here. We were really trying to get open all along. Next slide, please. And then I mentioned earlier the 40 transaction. I think the secretary did a good job of talking about the concerns. There's also, just a straight customer relations piece where, forcing someone to spend more money than they have is just not a good look from a customer relations point of view. But it's also, again, it could be dangerous if someone finds the need to try to sell it in order to make their transaction work. So for that reason, we didn't think that makes sense. That's really it. That's all I had. I just wanted to kind of set the table. We would be coming back here if we were allowed to remove those conditions, but without the removal and apply like anyone else would for an adult use and wait in line like anyone else would for an adult use license. But we won't be able to do that so long as those conditions live in our existing host community agreement.
Chairwoman Joyce, do you have any questions for the licensee?
Yes, sorry, that slide, I'll have to take a closer look at it. Attorney Ross, when would this 2-year period have expired?
Let me, and Alex, feel free to help me on this one, but
sure. It's 2 years from opening, so it would be January 2023.
Our concern.
Can you, I mean, we'll get to the public process, but can you describe for me So how that, was that part of the community process, the 2-year moratorium the first time around?
Yeah, when we first appeared before the McCormick Neighborhood Association in 2017, and we got their vote in favor way back then, which was no small task, we discussed opening first as medical. And we had early conversation about we would open as medical, we would show you who we are, and then only after we have been operating for a period of 1 year or 2020, we would then seek to become an adult use license. So we kind of made this commitment early on to McCormick. We assumed that we would be able to open and not be prevented from opening for that period of about 17 months. And had we been able to do that, I don't think you'd be seeing us here under this circumstance. We went back to the McCormick Neighborhood Association, as well as the New Market Neighborhood Association, or Business Association, Sue Sullivan's group, and we explained to them that were we to wait for the 2 years that's in our host community agreement, or even the 1 year, we would most likely not be able to apply for adult use. There would probably not be any licenses left, and it's a requirement that other stores are not being put through. It was intended because this was a very nascent and new industry, and we understood that. And had we been allowed to open, we could have lived up to it. But we've now reached a situation where it's an impossibility to proceed without losing the opportunity to get our license for adult use.
And when do you expect to apply?
Well, once this is removed, we would apply, we would go through the community process. So we probably won't be back here for months. I know you have your own queue, but we would have to do our community meeting, and we have to go to the city council or the 45 days there. And so, probably the earliest we could apply would probably be, I would say, 3 months from now. And I think you have a queue. We are not an equity applicant. We would be waiting just like everyone else. And I know that you have a bit of a queue. So I don't know if we'd be back here until maybe sometime next year.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Holmes, do you have any questions?
Nope, none. I have, so one, I guess I do have one. They haven't been operating at all in this time period?
They're open. They're open for
Oh.
medical. Our general manager, Pauline Matthews, there. She can tell you how it's going. It's going great. It's medical. It's not as busy as we'd like it to be. We've always said we're going to be medical and adult, but they are open.
Okay, nope, that was my only question. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith?
No, thank you, Mr. Ross, for your presentation.
Commissioner Lombos?
Thanks, Leslie. I just had one question for Attorney Ross. What was when you went back to talk about these waivers, because we didn't really get any correspondence, what was the response of the folks that you talked to about getting this waiver?
I know I always get so nervous about saying anything that anyone says, because if I don't hit it perfectly right, it's saying what they said. I felt good about those meetings. I know that Patrick Fandel from the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services was in those meetings. And if there was a big problem, we wouldn't be back here right now. I guess that's the best way I could characterize it. I think they went well.
Thank you. Commissioner St. Gian?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, you disappeared from my screen. We will now turn to public testimony. Is there anyone present who wishes to testify regarding this request, beginning with elected officials or their representatives? As a reminder, please limit your testimony to 2 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. Patrick Fandel, Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services. There was a community outreach meeting held on March 4th of this year to discuss the proposed amendments to the existing license and to just generally discuss the operations of the establishment since opening. It was a pretty straightforward meeting, I would say. There were neither active support or opposition raised at that time and no real concerns. I would just ask that they continue to reach out to the neighborhood as they, or if they pursue the recreational component. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other elected officials or representatives of elected officials who wish to testify? We'll now move to individuals who signed up to testify. You can also use the chat function. Calling Paul Campbell, please state your affiliation and address for the record. Does not appear that Paul is present. Are there any other individuals who wish to testify regarding this matter? The record will remain open until 5 p.m. of Wednesday of next week. The board will take this matter under advisement. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Calling Zip Run Inc. The proposed license premise is 1170 William T. Morrissey Boulevard. The proposed license type is delivery courier model. The proposed hours of operation are 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. This is a certified equity applicant. The date of the initial application is January 27th, 2021. The date of the community meeting is March 24th, 2021. For the record, because this is a new license type, I just want to give a brief overview. This is the courier model of delivery, which means that the address on the application is where the vehicles would be stored and would be dispatched from. There will be no cannabis stored at this location. This is, to put it as simply as possible, the Uber Eats of cannabis delivery. This means that the licensee can pick up from a retail, medical, or recreational dispensary and deliver direct to consumer. Again, there is no cannabis stored at this location at any time. There is no warehousing component. There is another license type for delivery that has recently been adopted by the CCC that does allow for warehousing. The application for that has not been promulgated to date. We're expecting it this summer or early fall. And for any applicant seeking to warehouse cannabis, that would be a new process, a new community process, and a host community agreement. With that, I will, before I ask Attorney Chayla White to testify regarding the equity certification, I will also note that due to pending amendment to the ordinance that established the BCB, we do not count courier model deliveries towards the one-to-one equity to non-equity. Attorney White.
Good afternoon, everyone. I was able to certify Zip Run as an equity business through the documentation that Gabriel Vieira submitted to me. He is the 57.5% beneficial interest holder of Zip Run Inc. He has resided in an area of disproportionate impact for at least 5 of the past 10 years. Mr. Vieira provided me with a proof of residency certificate from the Boston Elections Department that certified that established that he's been a resident of Dorchester since 2014. Mr. Vieira also satisfied the requirement of being a person who resided in the city of Boston for the past 7 years, sorry. And again, he submitted sufficient documentation to prove his 7 years of residency in the city of Boston. And finally, Mr. Vieira has self-identified as Black. So he meets that criteria as well. Are there any questions for me about the certification process?
Thank you. And for the record, for the first 3 years of delivery, the state has mandated that the only eligible applicants are majority social equity or economic empowerment applicants. Mr. Vieira, are you present?
Yes, I am.
All right, again, you will have 10 minutes to present. Jasmine Nguyen will notify you at the 5-minute mark and the 8-minute mark.
Am I allowed to share my screen? As of right now, it says host disabled.
I will share for you.
Okay, you will. Perfect.
Just let me know when to move to the next slide, please.
Perfect. Will do. Give me a second. I'm just trying to. Okay. Can you move it down a little bit? Yeah, that's fine. We can just start from there. Hi, everyone. My name is Gabriel Vieira. I am the CEO of ZipRun. I also have Ellis Morganwin, who is the Chief Growth Officer of ZipRun, as you can see stated in the picture. And then to the individuals to the left and right of Ellis are Christian Nicholson and Michael Gordon. Christian Nicholson is the Operating Officer of ZipRun, and then Michael Gordon is the Chief Technology Officer of ZipRun. ZipRun is essentially a social equity-based cannabis delivery platform. We created the e-commerce platform to facilitate delivery within the greater Boston region and beyond. Please move to the next slide. With that being said, our mission here at ZipRun is to employ, empower, and enlighten our local communities within the greater Boston area. Ultimately, we believe in making cannabis consumption more accessible and straightforward for individuals within the area and then consumers alike. And then lastly, our vision statement is essentially to be the social equity company that the CCC set out to be, that the CCC set out for social equity companies to be. Our ultimate goal is to support people from disproportionate areas within Massachusetts and beyond, and honestly, just to prevent the continuation of an inequitable status quo. With that being said, we're going to be providing jobs in the city, as well as within a wide variety of career paths. Next slide, please. So with that being said, I'm going to pass this slide off to Ellis.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ellis, and I am the Chief Growth Officer at ZipRun. Due to the fact that we are a social equity company, diversity and inclusion is very important to us. When it comes to employment, we want to recruit, hire, and retain a diverse fleet of drivers. We also want to promote and retain a diverse C-suite at ZipRun because we have to be a diverse company from the top to bottom. And also we want to create ERG at our company, which is an employee research group, which is basically a networking group and opportunity for our employees to raise awareness for the importance of inclusion and diversity within our company. So how exactly are we going to measure these goals? Here's some quantitative measures that we're going to take. We want to, in fact, make sure that 50% of our drivers and operation staffs will come from one of the following demographics: people who are minorities, women, veterans, people with disabilities, and individuals with criminal records and related to cannabis. This is fairly important for us because we want to continue to increase this population of people within the legal cannabis industry. We also want to make sure that, as currently constructed, 50% of ZipRun's executives come from a diverse background. And we want to make sure as we continue to progress as a company, we remain this number because we want to make sure that we are a diverse company from top to bottom for the foreseeable future. Also, we're going to collect a lot of data and analysis to see exactly from the amount of drivers that we hired, how many of them were promoted within our company, how many of them did we retain within our company, because we just don't want to hire people and have them leave our company. We actually want to empower them and give them more opportunity within the cannabis industry. And also, we want to make sure that as we continue that we revise our plans within ZipRun to make sure that we're continually getting better year over year.
Next slide, please. And so this will push back to me, Gabriel, to talk about the employment plan. Thus far, like Ellis mentioned, 50% of our driving force, our dispatch management force will be from the greater Boston area and will fall from under one of those four categories. We've already garnered a list of 1,500 applicants thus far, 40% of them being from the greater Boston area. So we're basically going to use that list to narrow down our hires from the greater Boston region, ultimately having higher than 50% of our staff come from the greater Boston region in one of those communities as well. And how did we go about that? A lot of it was a social media push, as well as flying around the city of Boston to create notice to our brand. Secondly, Ellis also talked about the plan for employment of minorities and women. That equally ties in with the Boston residents and that hiring system. Ellis touched based on that. And then our plan for offering competitive wages and benefits. As of right now, we're going to be paying our drivers $16 an hour, and then our dispatch workers the same. For the actual startup benefits part of our offering, we will be offering 401k plans eventually as we start to gain more progress within our business. But from right away, we're going to be offering unlimited PTO policies, higher salaries relative to other delivery companies in the space. And then obviously we're going to have more to come. And then the last piece of this is the ERG group that Ellis mentioned. Their overall purpose was was to essentially give our employees a voice. At the end of the day, I understand that the BCB has a strong say on making sure that we create a diverse mindset and purpose within our business. And this ERG group will keep us on the straight and narrow path to ultimately ensure that we always think diversity, because diversity is pretty much key for us going forward. And diversity was the reason why we were able to have this opportunity today. Next slide, please.
4-minute warning.
Thank you.
Thank you. So not only we're going to empower employees, we're also going to empower local communities in the state of Massachusetts. We're going to reduce a lot of barriers when it comes to employment. We're going to expedite applications from people who come from diverse backgrounds. The way we can do this is if you go on zipRun.com and you go through our application when it comes to drivers, you'll see that we can filter it to make sure that we're hiring people from the places and people we want to empower. We're going to support nonprofit organizations by donating money to them who align with our interests and our values. We're also going to provide mentorship programs to people who want to get into the cannabis industry and also to reduce those barriers. And we're also going to provide scholarships to individuals and youth who are from disenfranchised communities in the state of Massachusetts to make sure we accelerate that process for them to get equal opportunities when it comes to education.
And then I know we probably have a couple seconds left, but the next slide, please. So there's a security plan and the diversion plan, which is the slide after this one. Essentially, for our security plan, we will not have any markings or signs on our vehicles stating that we are holding cannabis products. There will be 4 vehicles in our cars at all time, live footage of the driver as well as the product as well. We also have a dedicated staff in the ZipRun headquarters, which is within that Morrissey Boulevard location, constantly monitoring our drivers and keeping in close contact. And then lastly, we have a panic button in our vehicles that will be installed, as well as locked and secured compartments to ensure the safety of our drivers and consumers. And then lastly, the plan for the prevention protocol, we will not be accepting cash. For obvious reasons. We just want to limit the amount of issues that can arise. And then we also instruct our drivers to be in constant communication with our HQ at all times on a 30-minute basis. And then for the technology measures that we put in place to enhance our safety with our drivers and our consumers, we integrated with a company called OnFleet, which is a route optimization software, essentially that allows us to track our drivers and have live feed if they're speeding, going too fast, or if there's an accident, so that we always have control and that we can see and ensure that ZipRun is always performing at its highest level and keeping safety as its top priority. Next slide, please. And then lastly, what we offer, we built, like I stated in the beginning, we built a technology platform that will supply or facilitate the delivery of cannabis products when we partner with dispensaries or retailers. With that being said, we created an online storefront similar to Uber Eats GoPuff. And then we also built a backend system that will help with the order management flow for our dispensary partners. And then lastly, there's the driver application, which makes sure that we keep the safety of our drivers as well as consumers at the top of mind at all times. With that being said, the last slide, just thanking everybody for allowing us this opportunity on the call today. And we definitely appreciate it and look forward to any questions or concerns that individuals may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Chairwoman Joyce, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I do, thank you. I might have missed this. I think it was around slide 8. I think you referred to 4 cars.
Yep.
Is that how many cars will be stored at the facility?
Sorry, no, I was referring to 4 cameras within each vehicle.
Okay.
4 cameras. So one would be a 360 camera view within the vehicle. The other ones, the other 2 will be focused on the drivers at all time, because there will be 2 drivers in the vehicles at all time. And the last one will be on the product at all time. There would be a 5th one if we were accepting cash, but we don't want to accept cash for obvious reasons. So the last camera, the 4th camera, will be on the actual product. And with that being said, the amount of vehicles that we plan to store when we start, we're looking to partner with about 4 dispensaries, and we're hoping that each dispensary has 2 vehicles dedicated to their dispensary. We can possibly grow because the Morrissey Boulevard location allows up to about 25 parking spaces, but we also have our employees that need parking space. So I would say anywhere between, I would say the max, the amount of drivers or amount of vehicles that we will have at that location will be 20 vehicles at a given time. And also to compound that, all of our drivers they'll be based on dispatched or batched order system. So essentially, once they go out for the day, they'll be delivering in 2-hour increments. So they won't be coming back to the home base. They'll only be coming back to the home base when either a break or it's the end of the day. And the reason why we built this process is because we saw how efficient Instacart created a delivery system, and we figured out scheduled delivery windows. This allows us to be more efficient and not cause a traffic jam at our location, but as well as not cause one for the communities where we're delivering at as well.
Okay, and Gabe, who will be running the day-to-day operations?
Yeah, so it would be myself and Christian. Christian is the COO of ZipRun, but it will be me and him heading that up.
Okay, and question about your equity status in light of your recent $2.3 million capital raise.
Yep.
How do you think you'll be able to maintain your equity status? How do you propose maintaining that? Or
100%.
you can go into a little bit more detail about that for us.
100%. So prior to the raise, I had about 80% in the company. So that raise took me down to 57%. We raised enough money so that we wouldn't have to raise again. So essentially the reason why we raised 2.3 million, just so we wouldn't have to go through that process once again and potentially get me below the 51% marker. So essentially this is the end of the raise for the foreseeable future as of right now. So I'll be able to maintain 51% at all times.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any further questions, Leslie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Holmes, do you have any questions for the applicant?
No, I don't. Thank you. It was answered in one of his slides. I did have a bunch written down, but once he went through the slides, I got the answers.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Smith, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Yes, thank you. So you talked about you're hiring basically for the driver position and the operations position initially, right? Because then you talked about people being trained and being able to promote it. So you're thinking of promoting them into executive positions? What would be the
100%. So I would say the hierarchy, when you start as a driver, there's about 4 positions that you can possibly attain. So you start as a driver. Yep, you start as a driver, you go into a driver lead, but normally we're going to hire a driver lead with the person that's had experience delivering for Instacart, Uber Eats prior. And through that application portal that we put up about 6 months ago, we've pretty much a laundry list of that 1,500 applicants thus far have that experience. So it goes from a driver to a driver lead to an operations manager and then operations director of that particular area. Meaning if we were partnered with Pure Oasis, Netta Brookline, and 2 other dispensaries, for example, that operations manager would manage those locations, and then so on and so forth as we grow. And then that director lead would essentially manage the entire state of our operations. So there's definitely opportunity for these individuals from disenfranchised areas to gain ownership as well as opportunity in this business. And what I mean by ownership is equity opportunity, because how we plan to separate ourselves is we believe at the end of the day, which is something these bigger corporations get wrong, is that the drivers are the most important people, because at the end of the day, they're the most consumer oriented, because they're the ones constantly going out there delivering to the consumer, talking to them. So we put a precedent on making sure our drivers feel that they are the most important person within this organization. So there's a lot of upside as well.
drivers equity in the company initially?
As of right now, no, we don't. But to a certain degree, that's something I definitely want to do, and I've talked to my co-founders about that, because I feel like no matter if it's 0.5%, 0.1%, we want to make everyone feel like they're a part of the brand. And if they feel like they're a part of the brand just as much as I feel like I'm a part of the brand, the company will go that much further with the diversity and inclusion mindset. And then
How old do you have to be a driver?
21 years old. 100%. And on top of that, I did not touch base on the other departments that we have in ZipRun. So we have the technology department. We obviously have the operations department. We have sales as well. So there'll be many opportunities for us to, promote job growth within the inner city community. Where I actually resided from. Myself, I went to the John D. O'Brien, and I actually graduated from UMass Amherst Eisenberg School of Business, and Ellis did the same, and we graduated a BBA in finance. But with that being said, we're promoting job growth for all, and our hope is to hire people from the inner city community.
Okay. You talked about setting up a 401k eventually. Do you have a sense of a timeline?
Yeah, so we do. want to get operational prior to doing that, because our drivers are not contractors, they're employees of the business. In terms of a timeline, I'm thinking more of a 3-month timeline, because as of right now, myself, I don't have a 401k for the business. We're trying to just save as much money as possible, but I'm thinking a 3-month timeline for everybody in the organization so that we're inclusive to all.
And last question is, I think, Ellis, in your presentation, you talked about scholarships. In the visual presentation, it says scholarships in Suffolk County, but you talked about Massachusetts.
100%. I can respond to that. In the presentation, it did focus on Suffolk County. We both did grow up in the inner city. Ellis went to Boston Latin and I went to O'Brien. So obviously the primary focus is to give back to students that came up like we did. But overall, we don't want to discriminate. We know the rest of the state is also in dire need of opportunities. So as we grow, as we get bigger, we definitely want to impact communities that we're actually involved in doing deliveries in. So hence the reason why we want to start in the greater Boston region. But eventually, once we touch base in other cities and towns outside of the greater Boston region, we hope to positively impact those areas as well, because it's not just about impacting the areas in which we grew up, but it's about impacting Massachusetts and hopefully beyond.
Are you picking those students?
How are we picking those students? Honest, yeah, of course. So essentially, we're gonna create an application that's gonna follow through to like several schools. So I went to O'Brien, so we're gonna send it out to the pretty much the connections that I still have there at the school, and we're gonna have several students fill it out. We're gonna go through the application process. Basically, we're looking for students that are from disproportionate areas that are looking to make a change in their life, or even if they're not, we're just looking to guide individuals on their path to success. So essentially, we're not going to make it a difficult application process, as I know there were so many difficult ones that I couldn't actually apply to or get access to when I was a kid. So we're going to make it as smooth sailing as possible so that it's easy access for every kid and for every family member.
And to add to that, I just want to say, like, personally, I got the Mavia Patent Right Scholarship, which is basically for kids that live in Suffolk County. And what we had to do, we had to submit an essay, proof of residence and things of this nature, and we will receive a scholarship of $1,000. So I personally benefited from that type of program, which is why I also wanted to bring that over to Zip Run as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lombos, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Thank you. I did have some questions about the career pathways, but thank you for that whole rundown from driver to driver lead to operations manager. That's very helpful. I love seeing that career pathway. I also just want to thank you before asking my next question about making sure that these are employees, these drivers, because there's a lot of issues around drivers that are not actually categorized as employees. So you are really making an example in your business and a model to really look to really follow. And my question was, you mentioned donations to nonprofits. Could you just give me a sense that aligned with your values and principles? Do you have a sense of who you're thinking about, groups you've already talked to? That was my question.
I don't know, Ellis, I know, Ellis, you're the one that focused on that, so I'll let you take it away.
We talked to organizations such as My Brother's Keeper in Boston, Inner City Weightlifting. Those two organizations, they're both about helping inner city youth in the city of Boston who come from struggling backgrounds and trying to give them more opportunities so they can stay away from, going down a negative career path, so to say. So to give kids the opportunities to do weightlifting opportunities or just mentorship programs in general. So I spoke to those people. I told them that we have interest in donating to their organizations, because we really want to make sure that we believe here at Zip Run that it's very important to help inner city youth early on instead of later. We want to make sure to give them as many opportunities as possible growing up, just like I had. I went to Boston Lion School, so we had many opportunities to work for State Street and other corporations early on in our careers, which put us on the career path where I eventually worked for State Street after college. So giving kids that early exposure to different ways of success and opportunities is fairly important. So those are the two organizations that I spoke to. Also, I've been in constant communication with Boys and Girls Clubs as well.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Commissioner St. Gian, do you have any questions for the applicant?
No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now turn to public testimony, beginning with elected officials or representatives of elected officials. As a reminder, please limit your testimony to 2 minutes. The record will remain open until Wednesday of next week at 5 p.m. Are there any elected officials or representatives of elected officials present who wish to testify?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board, Patrick Fandel, Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services. There was a community meeting held via WebEx events on March 24th with members of the community, area civic associations, and elected officials present. The applicant completed all statutory requirements for notification prior to this meeting and has maintained continued outreach to the community stakeholders. The applicant has adequately demonstrated their security plans for the premises and the operational logistics of the delivery model cannabis license at this location. The mayor's office would like to go on record in full support of this equity application, and we are very excited to see this Black and locally owned business open in the neighborhood and the job pathways that this business will establish there. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other elected officials or representatives of elected officials who wish to testify? Seeing none, I do not see anyone who has signed up online to testify. Are there any other individuals present who wish to testify regarding this application? Seeing none, the record will remain open until Wednesday of next week at 5 p.m. and the board will take this matter under advisement. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all. Have a nice day.
Calling Rooted In LLC. The proposed license premise is 195 Dudley Street, Roxbury. The license type is a recreational cannabis dispensary license with hours of operation proposed for Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. and Sunday, 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. This is a certified equity applicant. The date of initial application is May 10th, 2019. The date of filing with Inspectional Services was June 6, 2019. And the date of the community meetings were August 6, 2019 and March 24th, 2021. There is a buffer zone conflict with this applicant and the required buffer zone statement has been submitted. Before we turn to Attorney White's certification, I do want to provide a little background regarding this application. Previously, this applicant was in too close of a proximity to an existing K through 12 school providing education. It was within the 500-foot zone as dictated by state law. That zone was previously measured from the edge of one property to the edge of the other. The state at that time, this applicant withdrew their application because legally it would require the city of Boston to adopt an ordinance decreasing the buffer zone citywide. The buffer zone for schools cannot be decreased on a case-by-case basis. And there has been no effort in the city of Boston to decrease that 500-foot buffer zone. In fall of last year, the Cannabis Control Commission, at the state level promulgated after an open public comment period, new regulations that changed the way the school buffer zone is measured. Instead of lot line to lot line, it is now measured from the center of the entrance to the center of the entrance, unless there's an impassable barrier, in which case it is the shortest walking route from one entrance to the other. The board is legally required to implement that regulation. Legally, this board could not be more restrictive than the state in terms of buffer zones and its requirements. That in no way speaks to the appropriateness of this location. What that means is now that the state's regulations have changed, the applicant has a due process right to continue going through this process. So when those regulations changed, the applicant held an additional community meeting with the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services. Again, this board, as the citing authority, is tasked with determining the appropriateness of time, place, and manner. The proximity of schools or playgrounds or other businesses, establishments, or gathering spaces is absolutely within the purview of this board. The difference, because of the change in the regulations, is simply that this application was previously legally not allowed to move forward. However, with the change at the state level, it is now permissible for it to move forward for this board to consider the appropriateness of the proposal at the location. Are there any questions regarding that, Chairwoman Joyce?
Yes, Leslie, Can you think of any other applicants that would be in the same position that had applied for a place for a location, determined that they were too close to a school, and then found another location and have started the process since then? Or who would be in the same boat as this applicant?
It would actually be this applicant at 13 to 15 West Street in Chinatown. Under the previous regulation, they were too close to the school, but with the new measurement, and we don't have the documentation for the 13 to 15 West Street yet from a certified architect. But if that is provided with the new measurements, they would be allowed to go through the process.
And my other question is, under the old CCC rules, the 500-foot buffer zone, how close is this establishment to the school?
It is within, under the old regulations, it is within the 500 feet. I don't have the specific foot amount, but with the new regulations, and we did require that the applicant submit a certified plot plan and a signed letter from the architect. We, regarding the impassable barrier, which in this case is a retaining wall and a fence, and the BCB staff did work with licensing at the CCC to confirm that this was in adherence, was adhering to the new regulations.
Okay, I'll save the rest of the questions for.
And I can answer your question, Chairwoman Joyce. It was about 400 feet. And that 400 feet point to point, to be clear, there's a parking lot, there's a grassy knoll, and then there's the retaining wall. So the school technically ends at the grassy knoll, and that's where you would actually have to measure from. But between the grassy area and the actual physical closest entrance of the school, there's the grassy area, there's a parking lot, and then there's where there would be the entrances to the school, plus the retaining wall, plus the additional
I
space.
thought before this, the parking lot was considered school property for measurement purposes.
That's what I'm saying. I am measuring. So from the parking lot, from the grassy area that the school also owns to our location is approximately 400 feet point to point. So the rear of our location to the grassy area of the school, it's approximately 400 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions regarding the school buffer zone and the changes to those regulations at the state level? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Keith, is there anyone else who's going to be presenting with you today?
Joanne, Keith, Rokia, and Salman, and Michael Weir.
Great. As a reminder, you have 10 minutes. Ms. Jasmine Nguyen will notify you when you are at the 5-minute mark and the 8-minute mark. Please let me know when you want me to move to the next slide. Thank you.
Good afternoon and thank you. My name is Brian Keith, co-founder and co-owner of Rooted in Roxbury, and I'm joined today by several members of our team, including my co-owners and our security consultant, Michael Weir of the Weir Security. Today, we will be sharing background on our company and our experience, as well as our plans for recreational cannabis retail business at 195 Dudley Street in Roxbury. We will get through our presentation as quickly as possible while still providing you with thorough information in detail. Next slide, please. I'm a big believer that the easiest way to get an understanding of what a company stands for is by reading their mission statement. So here's ours. This is who we are. This is what we stand for. This statement is a guidepost for everything we do. About 3 years ago, my partners and I came together to develop a plan that could prevent big pharma and out-of-state corporations from coming into our neighborhoods to profit from the legalization of cannabis. After many discussions with members of our community, one thing emerged as the biggest concern. People feel this industry will only benefit a few, and that many in the community would love to have the opportunity to be part of this new industry. We believe that the people of Boston, and specifically our communities of color, should be the ones to participate, own, and invest in cannabis businesses in the city of Boston. And that's how the idea of Rooted in Roxbury evolved and cemented our mission. Next slide, please. This will all likely sound very familiar to the board as we presented to you in November of 2020. This timeline gives a look back at how we've got to where we are today. Back in 2019, we brought our proposal for 195 Dudley Street to the community. At that time, we received significant support from within the community, including from residents, abutters, and neighboring businesses. Ultimately, and despite widespread support, we withdrew our proposal because the location fell within 500 feet from a school buffer zone. We then identified a new location at 2177 Washington Street, which we also presented to the community, and again, which we received substantial support from the same stakeholders, including District 7 Councilor and now Mayor Janey. In November 2020, our proposal was approved by this board and we successfully negotiated a host community agreement with the City of Boston. Our next step in the process was to go before the Zoning Board of Appeals. Unfortunately, ahead of our zoning board hearing, we were notified by our landlord that we had to be significantly outbid for the lease on our space, and it was an offer he couldn't refuse. We had to abandon our plans at 2177 Washington. Prior to receiving this news, however, as Leslie just mentioned, there had been a change to the buffer zone requirements as relates to state siting near a school. The new law takes into account impassable barriers when calculating the distance from a dispensary and a school, and therefore 195 Dudley Street no longer falls within the buffer zone. So we have returned today with essentially the same proposal we brought to the community in 2019, with a clear pathway to approval and a lot of knowledge gained along the way by our team in the process. Next slide, please. With that, I'll let my co-owners introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joanne Keith, and I will be the Chief HR Officer. I will be responsible for the performance against our hiring plan, employee wages, and of course, employee benefits. I'm a longtime resident of the City of Boston, and have spent a substantial amount of time in Roxbury, including Dudley and now Nubian Square. And I am a 2001 graduate of Boston Latin Academy.
Salman Chowdhury, as Chief Financial Officer, I'll be responsible for overseeing financial performance and upholding our commitment to our investors.
Rokia Begum, as Marketing Officer, I'll be responsible for customer experience, company branding, and communication. So Salman and I have been longtime residents in Roxbury and Dorchester, and together we have owned and managed several businesses in Boston for over 20 years now. Some of the efficiencies in Shanti restaurants in Dorchester, Rosendale, and in Kendall Square, as well as Dudley Cafe in Nubian Square. We instead bringing like all the experiences we've gained throughout these successful businesses to our approach at Rooted In.
Thank you very much, team. Next slide, please. As Rokia mentioned, we couple our experience as community members ourselves with a strong track record of running successful neighborhood-based businesses and having extensive experience in the operation of regulated industries and managing thriving retail operations. Over the years, Rokia and Salman have created sought-after destinations that are tailored to the unique attributes of each neighborhood where they operate, garnering national and local awards and recognition. This includes landing Dudley Cafe and Nubian Square on Zagat's top 10 cafes in Massachusetts. Next slide. We wanted to be thoughtful, creative, and innovative regarding the manner in which we finance this project, all the while ensuring we were providing the community and specifically communities of color with the opportunity to receive positive impacts from cannabis. To that end, we created an investment model where with as little as $1,200 and as much as $62,000, members of the community can have a seat at the table in a billion-dollar industry. Our investment team for this location is 100% people of color, 51% women, and 100% Boston-based. Next slide, please.
5-minute warning.
And next slide. Our proposal for 195 Dudley Street is to bring 1,400 square feet of adult use cannabis retail space to the heart of Roxbury's Nubian Square. Our retail space would be the Dudley Street facing space and would not be displacing any of the current tenants. The location comes with 12 on-site spaces that we would not use for customers. Instead, we plan to work with nearby businesses to identify unused spaces and will also direct our customers to the approximately 175 public spaces available within a short walk from our location. Next slide. We would be looking to operate 7 days a week, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. and 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Sunday. As you will note on this slide, customers will enter on Dudley Street, flow through security and retail sections of the store, and exit onto Pevier Place, a private way. We will use order ahead capabilities and virtual queuing to ensure no lines form outside of our building. We will also have dedicated space inside of our location should we need to form a line inside. Next slide. This next slide is a closer look at Pevier Place, the private way which abuts our location. We'll be working with our neighboring abutters in the city on the best solution for the community for the use at this location, ideally identifying a solution to control access to the private way during regular business hours. Our goal is to ensure the safety of the community as well as our customers who will be entering the store from Dudley Street and exiting onto Pevier Place, as well as calm and slow what is currently cut through traffic in both directions. Next slide. We have the advantage of a location with ample options for transit. Our proposed business is located in the heart of Nubian Square, a short walk from the Nubian Square bus terminal. As I mentioned earlier, we do have 12 spaces on site, but we do not plan to use them for customer parking. Instead, we would be encouraging those who drive to the store to use public spaces, and we will also continue conversations with neighborhood businesses who have available parking that goes unused. One of the parking options will be the Blair lot. We understand that there are future plans for the development of the Blair lot, but no immediate plans. Including the Blair lot, there are a total of 175 public spaces within a quarter mile of our location and additional 111 private parking lot spaces. We absolutely will not allow customers to double park, and our customer will be agreeing to this policy ahead of their first purchase with us. If a customer does double park, our security team will be immediately aware and that person will not be served. We will also offer order ahead via mobile and computer and virtual queuing, which is going to help us control the flow of customers coming into the store. Our location, next slide please, will be kept secure by Michael Ware of Ware Security. And I'm going to turn it over to Mike to introduce himself and talk a little bit more about security systems and protocol.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Ware. I'm the owner of Ware Security. In the interest of time, I'm just going to kind of fly through this. So just a quick background about Ware Security. We started our business in 2002. Currently, we have clients that range from working at the Dimmick Center, which is the Dimmick Hospital in Roxbury, the Roxbury Mall, St. Mary's Center for Women and Children, a list of high-end food restaurants around the Seaport area, as well as we now do the private security for Ayanna Pressley. My background specifically is in law enforcement. I'm a graduate of Northeast University back in 1992. And then I received my health and human service degree from Curry College soon after that. I've been a Boston school teacher for about 5 years at one point, and I worked for the Federal Protective Services, which is under Homeland Security as a federal police officer. We currently have about 57 staff in our employee arsenal. Many of us are state special police officers, as well as Boston special police officers. And I'll talk about more of that maybe later on after the presentation. But we do have powers of arrest. We go through a specific long training to give us the powers that we need to make those arrests and enforce all of the City of Boston ordinances, as well as Massachusetts general laws. So with that said, I'm just going to, in the interest of time, I'm just going to move very quickly through this. I am in charge of,
next slide.
Thank you. Yep, next slide, please. Yep. So I'm in charge of putting together a swift action plan and camera system with the owners of the property. So we came up with slide 13. It talks about security systems and protocols. So basically, our team will lead security efforts and will ensure the location of customers are safe at all times. This slide details the extensive security requirements we will have in place to meet and exceed those state regulations. As accredited police officers, what I just talked about, we will work to enforce all applicable laws, ensure traffic is moved along and not allowed to idle, and will liaise directly with Boston Police. Boston Police will also have live access to what is right now, what we call in real time, 24 interior and exterior cameras. So notably, you must scan your ID for entrance and it is checked 2 more times by other agents before you can make your purchase. We're aligned to keeping underage individuals from using our products and entering our store. We also know the community has concerns about public consumption of product, which not only is illegal, but will also be closely monitored by my team in coordination with Boston PD. Thank you.
And thanks, Mike. Next slide, please. I will kind of wrap it up here by saying that we have a commitment to hiring at minimum 80% Boston residents, 50% Roxbury residents, with 51% of those residents being people of color and 51% of those being women. Next slide, please. We have a commitment to offering what is beyond a living wage in the city of Boston. Our financial modeling actually uses $26 an hour across the board as a placeholder for all employees. Next slide, please.
That's time, Brian.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I did it in less than 10 minutes last time. I don't know what happened.
Thank you. Before we move to questions from the chairwoman and commissioners, I apologize, Attorney Taylor White, if you would like to testify regarding the equity status of this applicant.
Sure. I was able to certify Rooted in LLC through documentation submitted by Ms. Rokia Begum and Mr. Solomon Chadri. Ms. Begum is the CMO, as she stated, and she is the 45% beneficial interest holder of Rooted In, and Mr. Chowdhury is the CFO and the 6% beneficial interest holder of Rooted In. Together, they hold 51% of the beneficial interest in Rooted In. They both qualify under the following. A person who has resided in an area of disproportionate impact as defined by the CCC for at least 5 of the past 10 years. They both have submitted sufficient documentation to establish that they have been residents of both Roxbury and areas of Dorchester that have been identified by the CCC as areas of disproportionate impact since 2013 through the present. Additionally, they qualify as a person who has resided in the city of Boston for the past 7 years. Again, they submitted the aforementioned documentation that was sufficient in proving that they have resided in Boston since at least 2013. And finally, they both self-identified as Asian and of Bengali descent, which qualifies them under the category of a person who is of Black, African American, Hispanic, Latino, or Asian descent. Are there any questions about the certification process?
Thank you, Attorney White. And I'll just ask, please limit the use of the chat to requesting to testify. Once we go through questions from the chairwoman and the commissioners, we will turn to public testimony, beginning with elected officials and their representatives. We will then turn to any individuals who previously requested to testify. We will then turn to the chat, and we will then turn to anyone who has accessed this meeting via either Zoom or the telephone, and everyone will have an opportunity to speak. Chairwoman Joyce, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Yes, thank you. My questions are about the location, not about the applicant or the equity status, and in particular, my concerns around its proximity to a school, even though it's allowed to move forward based on the change in the CCC rules. In your board memo, you state that the pricing structure will make resale of product prohibitive. What does that mean?
Well, that's not necessarily speaking specifically to the proximity of the school. To the location.
I was just thinking of reselling to students.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that there is an illicit market right now. There's been an illicit market for many, many years prior to the legalization of recreational cannabis. If someone were to attempt to buy one type of product at a dispensary, at a legal dispensary, versus buying it, in the illicit market, the price would be prohibitive. It wouldn't make sense to pay a clear premium that you pay in a dispensary setting, a legal setting, when there is an illicit market already. So what I'm saying is that, anyone with half a mind who were looking to score, if you will, wouldn't try to do it from a dispensary because it wouldn't make sense economically when the illicit market currently exists. Additionally, there's, for us, I know that the concern has always been us or any legal cannabis business selling to young people. This license, as we all know who've been through this process, is very difficult to get. It's something that is very easy to lose. The financial benefit wouldn't make sense to us to try to sell to a young or underage person or someone who we know to be irresponsible, who would then try to resell it, because that jeopardizes our ability to stay in business. We're here to be in business. We didn't get to mention it in our presentation because we ran out of time, but we have investors who are people of color from this community. We have a responsibility to do what's right by them as well as what's right by ourselves. And just being, living 4 blocks away from the site, this is my community. I have a responsibility to do what's right for this community. So selling or marketing or making this easy to access for young people is not something that we, my partners or our employees would ever do. Okay. And to say one more thing about that, and my apologies for being long-winded, we also want, and I mentioned this in November, and it rings true today, we also want to create a program where with the seat to sale tracking that the state mandates, if someone were to resell to a young person, we would want to, one, ban that person from our store, because you can tell from the box or from the packaging, who purchased it, when they purchased it, where they purchased it. But then not only ban them from our store, but ban them across the state from accessing legal cannabis altogether, because we don't want to work with people who are responsible.
Okay, I still have a couple more questions. Sorry,
Please,
I want to get to the things that I'm looking at through a licensing perspective. Can you go into greater detail about how you're going to ID people?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll let Mike Ware jump in as well. But we will have 3 ID checks. One would be at the front door.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, sure, of course.
Will it be visual? Are you going to scan IDs? What kind of technology are you using?
It would absolutely be scanned. I would say that we're going to scan it twice, but there'll be a visual inspection 3 times. Visual inspection at the front door, as well as a scan at the front door to verify who they are. Once they've entered the shop, there would be another scan of the ID, visual inspection at that same time as well. Once they've gone through the retail portion of the shop and they're ready to make their purchase, the individual who's checking them out would visually inspect the ID a 3rd time. And at that point, it's already been scanned twice, not necessarily to scan it a 3rd time, but that 3rd individual would visually inspect the identification to, verify they are who they say they are.
What kind of scanners are you going to use?
We would use the same type of scanners that are used today at different establishments which require IDs to be scanned. I don't have the.
Some of them are better than others. You can get an app on your phone, but I know from experience that a 16-year-old can buy a really good fake ID for $100. Yeah. And it has his name and his picture. And I'm also concerned, what's your process for out-of-state IDs?
Yeah, so for out-of-state IDs, we would require a secondary means of identification, whether it be a passport or some type of rail ID. We would require a secondary type of identification for anyone that's using, who's coming in from out of state.
And I would ask the secondary ID to make this part of your policy be a photograph ID, not a gym membership, not
100%.
Library card, not a,
And that goes without saying, because, a passport or a type of rail ID would naturally come with picture identification. But no, we wouldn't allow the usage of the items that you mentioned, or even I know some locations allow you to use a debit card with just your name on it or something like that. Right. We would absolutely require picture identification.
Okay.
And the rail ID, you require that. We all can't get on an airplane or get into a federal building today using a standard Massachusetts identification. You need that rail ID that has the additional ability to not be reproduced, and that's required by the federal government now.
And then, can you go into a little more detail about your investors and the business model and how they interact with your own structure and owners and all that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And we were and are and always very clear with anyone who approaches us and with an interest in investing in our business. I think we've done it a little bit differently. We could compare it to the last gentleman who spoke, the last proponent. We've done it differently than that, but I think that what they've done is more typical. What we've done is create an organization where the 4 of us that are mentioned are the owners of the company. Salman, Rokia, myself, and Joanne. We're the owners of the company, and think of it as, rooted in Roxbury corporate. Below that, you have the individual locations. In this case, you're allowed 3 by right through the state statute. Individuals who invest in our location are investing on a location-specific basis. So they're not investing in the company itself that are owned by the 4 of us. They're investing on location specific. They don't have any type of voting rights, if you will. So the reason we did that is because we know that if you get 40 or 50 people in a room, you could potentially have 40 or 50 different ideas of how things should move forward. We wanted to make sure, especially in a new and emerging industry, that we had the ability to independently, as leaders of the organization, make decisions that were in the best, in the benefit of the organization. So we have the responsibility, as I said, to make good decisions on behalf of our investors, location specific. As far as how they are compensated, our plan is to compensate them quarterly, and it would be based on levels that are based on the investment amount that they put in and a percentage of that they invested. And that number would be based on what the company determines is after profits and after it's determined what we need for ongoing operations. What we determine is left over that we would share to our investors. It would be based on the percentage that they bought in.
All right, thank you.
No, thank you.
Commissioner Holmes, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I do. It's specifically, as well as you all gonna know, it's about the security. And I'm just a little concerned because I know where security, the majority of your guards are armed. And right now we are not allowing armed security in cannabis establishments. So are you aware of that? And how are you gonna make sure that, you know, one of your armed guards doesn't pick up this shift at a cannabis shop? You're muted.
You've got your mute on.
There
Sorry
you
about
go.
that. Yeah. So thank you for that question. We are aware of the protocols and rules around firearms on cannabis properties. So we do have a lot of staff that actually don't carry. But those that do carry, that do want to express an interest in working at the cannabis store itself, can do so, but they have to do it unarmed. And we do have sites where we have armed officers legally that have a license to carry, or special police officers that work at an unarmed site. So we do have those cases right now, and we may even have those cases at this cannabis business here. But we will make sure that we don't, we follow all rules and regulations of the city, because those are the same rules and ordinances and national laws that we have to enforce. So of course we will abide by that.
How are you gonna ensure, and I'm just playing devil's advocate, how are you going to ensure that somebody that is armed isn't going to bring their weapon to do their job at the cannabis dispensary? How are you going to ensure that that doesn't happen?
Yeah, so one, that'll be clear during the training session before they even start. Two, they have to go through training before we even start any site. That's one of the things that we're really huge about doing. We do a walkthrough. Everybody knows what they need to do in whatever position that they're placed in inside the cannabis business. Two, I'm very heavily involved in our company. I patrol these sites. I'm active in these sites. You'll see me in uniform working at the cannabis store as well. As well as we have 4 patrol officers who patrol all of our sites. We have 19 sites across the state. And those patrol officers come, they do a site visit, they make sure uniform and hygiene is all set. And they'll know, based on the contract guidelines, that there should be no weapons on the site. So those are just some of the ways that we can ensure that our officers who are assigned to this cannabis business will not have their firearm. And again, we train everybody before we place them at a site. Anyone who works at this cannabis site, just like any other site, will have to do the walkthrough. And that's part of the information that will be distributed during training.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all, Leslie. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Yes, thank you, Leslie. Brian, this is pretty much the presentation you did in November. So I'm going back to, you said is it your starting wage is $26 an hour?
No, to answer your first question, it's basically the same presentation from November because we literally moved about 3 blocks away from 2177 Washington Street. So the issues, concerns, what we're doing and how we're doing it is very similar in this iteration as it was at 2177 Washington. With regards to the wage, no, No, sign me up if it's 26, right? No.
But you
Our
mentioned something about
average,
$6 an hour.
so yes, for our financial modeling, we used $26 an hour as an average pay for all employees. What that allowed us to do was just take an average of, what would be the lower end, what would be the higher end, and then come to kind of that median point of $26 an hour. And then we use that to model out our employee costs for a certain time period. So no, I don't think we would start at 26. I don't think also we would end at 26, but it's an average for our financial modeling.
So where would you start?
I think what we're looking at is between 16 and 17 to start, depending on the role, depending on the position. On top of that, and again, my apologies for not finishing the entire presentation, but on top of that, the employees would have access to a payout, a profit share, similar to what the investors would be paid out. They would also have access to that same type of system. It would actually come from the four of us, the four owners. We would take a percentage from each of our, a percentage plus from each of our stake in each location, and we would provide that to the employees as a profit share that they would receive on a quarterly basis along with the investors.
Which you listed as 5%, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that I knew it was 5. I knew it was 1+. So I'm glad it's listed in that paperwork. So yes, it's that 5%. So that's 1.25 or so.
Okay. And so back on that profit sharing, you said it's location specific and it's based on success.
Correct.
So define what success would look like.
So success is profits. If the store is profitable, we would, at the end of each quarter, look at where those profits lie, and then determine what the location requires for ongoing operations. If we determine that we need, let's just say, $1 million for ongoing operations, but we had a profits of $500,000, $1.5 million, then we would have a bucket of $500,000 that we could determine whether or not what portion of that is shared with the investment group.
So there's no cap, right? It's regardless of, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, sorry.
Go ahead, finish. Sorry.
No, there's no cap on what the payout could be, or what I should say the profit sharing portion of the profits could be. There is no cap on that number. It's based on what's required for ongoing operations, and then what we determine is, reasonable amount to profit share with the investment group.
Okay. And then sort of last question, I was just wondering, why aren't you using your parking spaces there? You said there were 7.
Well, we're not using the parking spaces there because there are other businesses that are located in the actual building. Currently, they utilize anywhere between 6 and all of the parking spaces at any given time. So what we're trying to do is impact current businesses as little as possible. So we have the opportunity based on what the landlord would give us as part of the lease. But if we also have Dudley Square, which has more than enough parking, and again, apologies for not getting through the presentation, but
more than enough parking right now.
I'm sorry. Yeah, well,
Nubian Square.
Sorry, you're 100% correct. Nubian Square, more than enough parking right now. But even if you go back pre-pandemic, we have an office in Nubian Square, and there's never a time where me without commercial plates has an issue finding a parking space, in the area. And I won't embarrass myself by telling you how close I live and that I still drive to Nubian Square, but I've never had an issue parking in Nubian Square. The other piece of the answer is that, we want individuals to walk through Nubian Square because we're actually providing a benefit for our customers to utilize the resources in the businesses that are in Nubian Square. And that benefit would be covered by us at Rooted in Roxbury. It wouldn't be covered by the businesses that would be being utilized by our customers.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lambos, do you have any questions for the applicant?
No, I have no questions at this time and looking forward to public testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner St. Gian, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Thank you. I, and remember your presentation from November, and we reported out favorably, and I really appreciate the business model and the investment in the community, people of color. Even though it is relatively close, the new location, that area is a significant place of traffic jam and traffic log. And I wondered if if there has been any kind of traffic study done or plan to do to help ease that flow.
Yes, there is a traffic study in the works. Absolutely.
Okay.
There was a recognition by us that the area does have significant traffic. The way we look at it though, and anyone who lives in the area should agree with me, the traffic that flows through that area keeps on going. And that's the problem with the economics of Nubian Square, is that people pass through Nubian Square, but nobody stops in Nubian Square. Mm-hmm. What we're trying to do is give people a reason to stop in Nubian Square and spend time and dollars in Nubian Square. And not just time and dollars with us at our business, but as I mentioned to Commissioner Smith, we're also giving them an incentive to stay in Nubian Square and spend their dollars in Nubian Square. We have a program called, we don't have a name for it yet, but we estimate, and this was in the presentation, but we estimate that the program would generate about $400,000 in additional revenues for local Nubian Square businesses. And that's based on 75 people, which is, a quarter of our anticipated business of 300 customers a day, spending $15 on average in those local Nubian Square businesses on a daily basis, because we're open 7 days a week. That number extrapolates out to $400,000. And that's likely $400,000 that wasn't there previously, and $400,000 from people who likely have never been to Nubian Square because they've never had a reason to go to Nubian Square. So as it was in November, our goal is to not just bring in traffic, foot traffic for ourselves, but also to capture that foot traffic and direct it to the businesses in Nubian Square. To that end, showing this model to the businesses in Nubian Square, as you can see from our packet, we've gotten significant support from some of the local businesses in the area, because they recognize that, what we're doing, obviously it's for us, but it's not just for us. It's actually for the community and the businesses as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are going to take a 3-minute recess before we begin with public testimony. If you've not already signed up to speak, please utilize the chat function. If you are on the phone and cannot utilize the chat function, I will call those individuals towards the end. And I apologize to Jasmine Wynn, our project manager. Is it *9? *9 is what will allow you to unmute yourself, but we'll make sure that we have an opportunity for everyone to testify. Again, your testimony will be limited to 2 minutes. You can also submit written testimony, and no additional weight is given to spoken testimony over written. So 3 minutes and we will be back. Thank you. All right, thank you all. We will now turn to public testimony. Again, public testimony will be limited to 2 minutes per individual. You will be muted after 2 minutes. You also have the option to submit written testimony, and the record will be kept open until Wednesday of next week at 5 p.m. And again, the same weight is given to written testimony as is given to spoken testimony. We will begin with elected officials or their representatives. Are there any elected officials or representatives of elected officials who wish to testify?
Sorry, was in the middle of walking. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. Jason Gant from the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services. The Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services would like to submit a position of non-opposition and defer to the experience of the board. For the record, we have received a variety of constituent concerns related to this proposal. The applicant and his team have been committed to the process and continues to address these concerns with the community. All support and opposition has been submitted to the board for review. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other elected officials or representatives of elected officials who wish to testify? Seeing none, we will turn to individuals who signed up to testify online. When I call your name, please, if it's not your full name, please state your full name. Then please state your address and your affiliation, if any, for the record. Calling Michael Kozu. Is Michael Kozu present?
Yes, my name is Michael Kozu. I'm with Project Right, and I'm at 320A Blue Hill Avenue. I'm speaking in opposition to this proposal. I'm concerned that they moved ahead with this application process while they're having a scheduled meeting with the Mount Pleasant Vine and Forest Street Association on Wednesday, the 28th of this month. To me, it made no sense. It also makes no sense that they're proceeding in a heavily congested intersection without having a full traffic plan in place. We also asked questions at previous meetings. How are you going to shield? There are a number of school children who are in this area. There's bus stops in this area. There's a lot of heavy traffic in this area. We asked what their plan was. They did not have a very good plan, or had a non-existent plan on how they're going to shield the underage students from viewing this business as a normalization of life in the area. I sent in a study that shows that there's been a significant increase of hospitalizations of young people who have ingested THC edibles as part of my testimony. I think there's other issues about the closeness to the school buildings where a number of us are going to work on that, because that was passed during the pandemic when all of us were too busy trying to look at several hundred page regulations as we were trying to respond to the pandemic. So we are going to push back on that. The other concern is that their traffic and transportation and parking plan is problematic. They're going to ask people to park in spots throughout Nubian Square and have people walk. Already we've had instances where 430 Blue Avenue and the Brookline store have had patrons robbed of their purchases as they go to and from store. In Nubian Square, there's a lot more negative activity that goes on that will make these customers more prime targets once they leave the store. So there's other people that are on here that will speak in opposition. Let me stop here.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kozu, could you please state your address for the record?
I did 320, the letter A, Blue Avenue, Dorchester 02121.
Thank you very much. Calling Reginald Jackson. Is Reginald Jackson present? Calling Vincent Ware. Is Vincent Ware present? Calling Lorraine Payne Wheeler. Is Lorraine present?
I'm here. Good morning.
Your address for the record.
My address is 85 Moreland Street, 02119. And I'm speaking for Roxbury Path Forward Neighborhood Association and members that live on Greenville Street who couldn't be here today in the afternoon. And so I submitted a letter, and I just wanted to ask the board, you know, with other applicants, you know, if you get a refusal letter from the ZBA, you only get so much time in which to appeal. And so in this case, it's true that these applicants started in 2019, but as you pointed out, they withdrew that application and were approved by this board at a different location. That was a location that didn't have some of the problems that this location has. And additionally, the neighborhood has already gone through and talked about how this is close to schools and it's close to a bus stop that is right there at Pivar Place. And the photo that was shown of that location does not emulate how it actually looks because it's filled with cars all the time. And so because of these issues with traffic, because there's already an approved cannabis business at 100 Hampton Street, it's going to turn Orchard Gardens, a jewel of public housing. That would mean that they would have cannabis business on both sides of the perimeter of their housing. And it is true that we have a lot more housing coming to Nubian Square, and this might be, you know, at some other time, an acceptable location. But as to right now, and because of its proximity to schools, we would just ask this board to vote against the applicant for this location. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was exactly 2 minutes. Calling Marcia Smith. Is Marcia Smith present? Calling Siddiqui Kambon. Is Siddiqui Kambon present?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please state your address for the record.
516 Warren Street, Dorchester, Mass. And let me move very quickly here, just so much. Let me just say this, that I heard Mr. Key talk about a lot of community support. Well, I'm the chair of the Nubian Square Coalition, which is a program of the Black Community Information Center, and we led the effort for the name change of the square and the station, and hopefully it's going to happen in the library. Not only in terms of the name change, but also we wanted to bring in a new era of prosperity for the square. So let me just say this, that number one, that our organization, in fact, we're in the midst of a process right now where we want to establish a health clinic in Nubian Square to address folks who have addiction. And we're in communication with the folks at B3 around the issue of getting rid of the troublemakers that are there also. So what we're talking about is a rejuvenation process, and that as the chair of this coalition, we have about 22 organizations, individuals, and what have you, that are aligned with us in saying that they're opposed to this. Now, in regards to the location itself, the bottom line, it's already been addressed. First of all, there's like 4 schools in immediate proximity of the proposed location and a playground. And then, they have the issue with the fire department, where they have problems now around the issue of traffic, where they have difficulty coming out of there as it is. And so it's a lot of, the population density there is very high. And as mentioned, a lot of our youngsters, once they get out of school, they come through that area either to catch transportation or to head home. And so what we're saying is that why would we want to bring in an entity that's going to contribute to the problem in terms of encouraging folks to get high? And this whole thing about foot traffic, I talked to the Main Streets director in Grove Hall. They have the Grove Hall business up there. He said they don't get any foot traffic. Those folks get their purchase and come out and go to their car and go home.
That is 2 minutes. You can also submit additional written testimony. Thank you very much.
May I respond to the question about the foot traffic?
Let's go through all of the testimony, please.
Fair enough.
Calling Connie Forbes.
Hi, Connie Forbes, 47 Warbeck Street in the Dorchester section of Roxbury. I listened to everyone's conversation about this proposal, and what I heard was, let's do what's right by our investors and let's do what's right by themselves. But I didn't hear let's do what's right by our children. We have a very significant gathering spot for children. I sent my letter in with some photographs which show the direct line of sight for the playground, direct line of sight for the bus stop. the fact that every single recreational cannabis shop has long lines of people outside of them, I haven't heard one that did not, that our kids are going to be walking past this because there is only one way for 2 of the schools to access the bus stop that's right in the line of sight of the building. So we have, and I heard the number, and it could be correct, I'm not certain, but 200 students when they come in and when they leave are going to be forced to go by this building and see these long lines. They're going to be curious. And the fact that they were comparing it to illicit market for marijuana or for cannabis, illicit market is not as visible. It's not present. It's not right in front of your face. This is in front of your face. And the fact that they've had a number of people robbed as they leave these shops, it's going to bring a bit more violence to the area. That's not something that this community needs or wants. So until I hear someone say that we put our kids first, and the reason why that 500-foot buffer zone was there to protect our children, we shouldn't, this is something that we really need to have to acknowledge. This 500-foot buffer zone, which was voted for, was put in place for protection of our children. It wasn't put in place to protect our building. It was for our children. And so to focus on the line of sight, the line of walking, the idea is it was for protection of our children. And if we can't make that a priority, then there's something wrong with this community. And we've already had incidents in the media where our children were put in dangerous situations by public officials. And we don't need that to happen or continue to happen. As a person in this community who's been through a lot of stuff, I will tell you that our kids.
Or that is 2 minutes. Thank you. You can also submit written testimony. Calling Ethan Vaught. Is Ethan Vaught present?
Yes, I'm here.
Your address.
My name is Ethan. Sure. My name is Ethan Vogt. I am a resident of 108 Trenton Street in Boston. I formerly lived at 23 Kearsarge Avenue, which is right across from the Boston Day and Evening Academy. I continue to be a gardener in the Boston Day and Evening Garden, and I also take care of a garden at the bowling building. So I'm in Nubian Square several times a week. I'm testifying in support of this applicant. I think the locally owned aspect is incredibly important. And I not only go to the Dudley Cafe, but I go to the Haley House. I go to the Silver Spoon. I go to Mario's. I see Mr. G. I go to the Frugal Bookstore. I go to Oogie's Subs. These are all Suya Joint, PNR. These are all businesses I care about. And I think that these are all businesses that would benefit from the increased foot traffic. So while I certainly appreciate the community's concern and I know the neighborhood very well as a resident, I recommend that the board support these candidates. And that's all.
Thank you very much. Calling, and I apologize, I think I skipped over someone. Give me just one moment. Calling Patricia Courtney. Is Patricia Courtney present? Calling Ladina Mosby. Calling Kimmel Claus.
Can you
Okay, calling Carrie Ann Gordon.
Hi, this is Ladina. I couldn't, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Please state your address for the record.
My address is 829 Blue Hill Ave, Dorchester, 02124.
Go ahead, please.
And I am in opposition to this cannabis being in our community. One, for the kids, for the children, and two, there's 2 different Nubian squares that people are talking about. There's one reality of the social ills and the addiction and the different socioeconomic disparities that are happening in Nubian Square, and also just the presence that our children do not need to see, be exposed to. And also, I feel like it's a slap in the face for all the Black and brown men that have been locked up because of illegal drug possession. And to me, I'm in total opposition. I'm in agreement that this is not a thing that will empower our children, such as keeping them and helping them to be able to compete on the world market in IT and different aspects of really investing in the community, to be really rooted in Roxbury, is to actually present an entity that will really help the people socially, psychologically, and it's just something, and our children don't get to be innocent. So I'm in opposition to it. I feel like if you want something that's going to really help the community and not line other people's pockets, then put something that's going to help them to be advanced and close the different gaps that our children are not competing on and on different venues like in IT and science and math. We're trying to save this community and revitalize it for real.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony. And again, please use the chat function to request to testify. Testimony placed in the chat will not be considered. We've also received a significant amount of inquiries about the school buffer zone. Please, Jasmine Nguyen, our project manager, will put our email in the chat. We're happy to provide you with that information, but I just want to make it clear for the record, this is not the city of Boston's regulation. This is the state's regulation, and we are, again, legally required to abide by it. I'm now going to turn to individuals who have requested to testify.
You called me, Carrie Ann Gordon, before Ladina.
Okay, please go ahead. Please state your address for the record.
Hi, my name is Carrie Ann Gordon. I reside at 27 Oak Ridge Street, Mattapan, Mass. 02126. I am here in support of Rooted in Roxbury, and I believe it's a very conscientious and well thought out plan. And I know some people will say that I live in Mattapan, not in Roxbury. One, we have similar ills, and two, I use the bowling building. I pick up my niece and nephew from schools. And speaking of the children and speaking of the area and some of the opposition as it relates to children, I believe that it's, as someone who uses the bowling building and their tech center to bring my nieces and nephews to really close some of those gaps that Ladina had mentioned, I feel that there is room for both protecting our children and encouraging entrepreneurship and righting some of the wrongs. It is not normalization. You know, the jailing was the normalization. This is to rectify. This is to give people within the community more money and opportunity. So it does speak, to my mind, it does speak to the children, it does speak to opportunities, and it does speak to normalization in a positive way, that we're not just here to be acted upon. We have agency. And I feel that is important and that's overlooked. And as someone who just went to Frugal Bookstore and didn't continue on my path because there were 12 or so men standing around, and I didn't feel comfortable going to get something to drink, I think bringing more foot traffic, even if they're standing around, and bringing more eyes is important. That's my testimony.
Thank you very much. Calling Imam Abdullah Farouk.
Yes, good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum.
Please state your address. Please state your address for the record.
I live at 724 Shambat Avenue, and I represent maybe 1,000 people at least who live in Roxbury and who live in close to Dudley Station. We have a deeper concern than business models and making profits and the negative impact that it has, because our children are watching something that has been for years negatively affecting them and also negatively affecting their upbringing, made normal, made good. So my concern is a moral and ethical thing, not about how much money is going to be made, but what has negatively affected my people as an African American for nearly a century, keeping them off the track of progress in their life needs to be addressed. Never mind how much money is going to be made. Dudley Station, as it used to be, needs to be changed to Nubian Square, and Nubian Square does not want it. And I represent also, am a part of a Dudley Square to Nubian Square coalition of nearly 25, 30 organizations that don't want this. So I advise the commissioners and you as the executive secretary, Leslie, that you would please make sure that this place is not open. If it's medicine that we're using, then they need to go to the drugstore. And if it's recreational, our children have been too busy being entertained and misguided for the last 100 years. So we do not want it. I'm in opposition to it, and I call upon you to make sure that that's noted.
Thank you very much. Calling Sean O. Please state your full name and your address for the record.
Hi, my name is Sean O'Connor. I live at 143 Mount Pleasant Ave in Roxbury, 02119. I'm pretty much going to be repeating some of what the other what some of the other people in objection have said. I want to thank Chairwoman Joyce for not letting the variance from the state just be a box ticking exercise. I think a couple of people have mentioned the line of sight up to the school. The photo that was shown of Pavier Place there doesn't really give the true perspective on how close that school is. If we're talking about time, place, and manner here, like if you stand at the corner of Dudley and Pavier and look up, pretty much all you can see is that school. So, I mean, if you want to keep it in the letter of the state law, yeah, maybe they can get around the 500 feet, but just stand in that corner and you'll see that it's really not in, the spirit of why that restriction was put in place. And also, just to repeat what other people have said, on the corner of Greenville and Dudley, the bus stop is right there. And I guess the last thing is, I honestly think that this virtual queuing and this virtual lines is, I think it sounds like sci-fi, or, I've never seen it. The one way a pot shop is by the big lines outside. So I guess I'll cede the rest of my time. I tried to keep that under 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Calling Scott Kirkwood. Please state your address for the record. Is Scott?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Scott Kirkwood, owner's rep, 1127 Harrison Ave. We also have offices over at 1904 Washington Street, so right nearby. I just want to go on record in support of the project. I do think it will be a benefit to the square. I do think it'll increase foot traffic, and I obviously understand the concerns that people have voiced, but I think there's lots of other problems that people are dealing with, alcohol, you name it. And I think that if it's going to have a positive economic impact and increase foot traffic and potentially safety with monitored streetscape and security, I think I know that there might be a bit of a concern about people leaving the establishment, but I do think that it's additional security and eyes on the street. And it's a shot for passersby to go somewhere else and patronize another business. So that's all I have to say, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Calling John Napoli. Please state your address for the record.
Hi, this is John Napoli from the Boston Gardener at 2131 Washington Street. Also a board member of the Nubian Square Neighborhood Association, which is in full support of this business, as is Roxbury Main Streets. And we are in full support of having Nubian Square be a cannabis-friendly business zone. We need the economic activity, we need the jobs, we need to fill the empty storefronts. I have raised my family here, and you know what my kids saw every day? They saw people drinking, they saw people shooting up, they saw people passed out, throwing up all over themselves. That's what we're dealing with. And no one is concerned about the buffer zones for liquor stores or the methadone clinics. It's completely hypocritical. We're using cannabis to get people off of heroin, to get people off of liquor. This is going to be used to create a better Nubian Square, a healthier Nubian Square, and a more vibrant Nubian Square. We are 100% in support of this project and any further cannabis projects, and for removing the pointless, hypocritical buffer zones that are preventing us from turning Nubian Square into a greener, healthier, better place for our children and our families. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Could you please state your address for the record?
10 William Street, Roxbury, Massachusetts.
Thank you. Calling Sammy Nabulsi. Please state your address for the record.
Thank you, Secretary Hawkins. My name is Sammy Nabulsi. I'm a resident at 235 Eustis Street in Roxbury, Massachusetts. And I'm here speaking in favor and solely my capacity as a resident of Roxbury in support of the project and in support of the license. I've known and I've always been in awe at Mr. Chaudhry's and Rukaya's ability to invest and make just great places in various communities within the city of Boston. And I think they've presented a project here on an idea here that will do just that again in Nubian Square. Something that Mr. Brian Keith said earlier really resonated with me, which is that so many people drive through Nubian Square, but very little people stop in Nubian Square. And that's not to say that this is the only reason why people should come to Nubian Square. There are a ton of reasons why people should come to Nubian Square. I get all my coffee morning and afternoon in Nubian Square, my books in Nubian Square, and all my takeout since everything closed down last March in Nubian Square. But I'm totally in favor of anything else that's going to bring foot traffic, economic opportunities, jobs, and people generally to Nubian Square. And so please count me in as a member of the community and the neighborhood in support of this project.
Thank you very much. Calling, I'm sorry, give me one moment. I'm going through. Okay, again, please use the chat to request to testify. Please do not use the chat to put your testimony on the record. It will not be recorded. Is Henderson Headley present? Is Robert George present?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Madam Chairperson, for giving me this opportunity. While I'm here not to speak specifically on this specific proposal, I'm here to share that Roxbury Main Street as the Executive Director for Roxbury Main Street, located at 2334 Washington Street in Roxbury. We endorse the cannabis industry for Nubian Square. Roxbury Main Street's main goal is to support the business entity through the various business, and the overall community. Currently, we represent 160 members from Greater Roxbury and over 50 business organizations. And our executive board voted to endorse this industry in Nubian Square for the fact that we have done our research and saw what it has done for the various communities across the Commonwealth and across the country in terms of foot traffic. We all heard of some of the ills and plights that we are currently seeing in Nubian Square. And we do believe we owe it to the various businesses in Nubian Square to provide the business environment for them to survive. Not only were they hit hard by COVID-19, not having the ability to receive the various federal funding, etc., they're struggling. Many individual businesses in that square at this point are on the verge of losing what they've worked very hard for. And we saw this as another opportunity to infuse new business and new activity and new foot traffic into the square, working along with all the other public entities to remove some of the negative things that are currently, we heard, exist in Nubian Square. This is just another pillar to revise and revitalize that business community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is the individual who is with Fire Code Design, is that individual present? If so, please state your name and address for the record.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please state your name and address for the record.
Okay, my name is Ronette Taylor, and I'm the owner of Fire Code Design. I've been located at 195 Dudley Street for 13 years. I have a question to the Roots. Association. So you talk about the entrance of 195 and the exiting of the side of Provera Street. So, and you talked about 200 to 300 customers coming in. Now, the exit for me go on is going to be changed, because right now a customer can come in at 195 and exit at Purvis Street on Purvis. Now my exit is going to change because you all are going to move in. So do you think the 200 to 300 clients that you're going to be having coming in and out is going to affect my entrance? Do you think that's going to hurt my business at all? I really do, because I have, like this past week, I had 20 customers coming in by fire extinguishers or dropping off blueprints or something with my business. So how can you help me to keep my business here? And how will that, what's a solution that you can give to the public now about how I can keep my, how it's going to help me? Because that will definitely hurt me, having all these customers coming in and out, because that's the only way I can enter into my building, and that's the only way I can exit my building is on the side of Purvis Street. So what's the solution for that? You talk about economical growth and growing the community. I just want to know that answer, Solomon and Brian.
Can I answer the question or no?
No, Brian, please, ma'am, if you can also submit testimony in writing, and we'll also accept testimony and explanation from the applicant regarding the impact, but we can't enter into a back and forth here. I'm calling Richard Chase. Please state your address for the record. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I believe you just muted yourself.
Do you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Please state your address for the record.
My address is 47 Hutchings Street, Dorchester, Mass. And I've been a member of this community for over 60 years. I've worked for the media for over 50. And I am concerned that people keep saying that a cannabis store is not good for the community. And the cannabis stores are good for other communities. Why can't it be good for this one? We need something that helps the people in this community. And I've seen too many people go to jail and serve time in jail for ridiculous things. But we need to do something to serve the folks in this community. That is my, and I'm, yes, the other thing is the people in this community voted overwhelmingly for cannabis. So why is so many people now fighting to stop somebody from doing something that's going to help the people in this community and also help people that make money or serve themselves? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Calling Shakura Wilkins. Please state your address for the record. I see that call-in user 2 has their hand raised.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please state your full name and your address.
Hi, my name is Shakura Wilkins, and my address is 1 Atherton Place, Roxbury, Mass.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Hi, so I would like to, hi everybody. I'm a 5th generation living in Roxbury. It started with my great grandmother. They were here for over 60 years, and they saw the transition of Roxbury. And one thing that Roxbury had back in the days is they had a lot of businesses, and we were just, a lot of our businesses were taken away from us. A lot of our schooling, a lot of things that happen in Roxbury. And right now we have a lot of issues down Dudley. We have a lot of people addicted to drugs. We have liquor. A lot of our residents are unemployed. A lot of people There's many liquor stores in our neighborhood, and we have an abundance of things that get people high and forget about their problems, but we really need things that will help support the people economically without dulling their minds. Now, I know there's some benefits to, like, for medical marijuana and maybe CBD, which is good for anxiety and things like that. But I personally myself believe that we don't need that in our neighborhood. We need other things to uplift our people.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony. I could call in user 2. If you're on the phone, please hit *9 to unmute yourself.
Sorry, it's *6 to unmute yourself. *9 is to raise your hand.
Oh, I apologize. Thank you, Jess.
Okay.
It's *6 to unmute yourself. Right. Are there any other individuals who have not previously testified who wish to testify regarding this application? All right, seeing no one, again, the record will be kept open until Wednesday at 5 p.m. Oh, and I'm sorry, call in user 2. Can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can. Please state your name and your address for the record.
Okay. Marcia Smith, number 94 Moreland Street, Roxbury, Massachusetts.
All right, go ahead, please.
All right, I wish to speak in opposition, not to the cannabis because it's cannabis, but the location. I have lived in Roxbury for 70 years. I have taught in Roxbury for almost 40 years. I'm very familiar with the Nubian Square area, and that particular spot there is surrounded by children. We have the beautiful new library, which is in line view practically of it. You have the school, you have the scores of children who live in the Orchard Park development, the families all around there, and these long lines of people to standing in line to purchase marijuana, I think is very detrimental. I think it's disrespectful. I have seen the lines in Brookline, and those lines are not where the children who live in those neighborhoods, who attend schools in those neighborhoods, are exposed to it. And I think our children need to be better protected. I think that having all the children riding the school buses in and out, the children who live there, the children who attend the schools, the children who go to the playgrounds, all of those children just seeing this is the norm, I don't think it's good. And I don't think it would be allowed in a community that was not essentially Black and brown. And that's all. Again, ask that you consider, for those of you who are listening and to the board, consider our children. They need better than this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a request from Mount Pleasant to testify. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, we have our fiscal agent at the Vine Street Community Center, which is at 339 Dudley Street. I just wanted to say, and also my name is Livette Coney, and I also wanted to say that I just wanted to talk about this narrative that's being painted. We do not care about this business. We care about the location. The location is the issue. So all of the noise around anything else should be muted. And the fact that not only, and also the hypocritical statement that was made, this site in particular has a whole host of other problems that make it a huge issue of safety, a safety issue. Not only do you have a building construction that's going to go on across the street, 4-story building. Not only do you have the fire station, not only do you have all of the schools and the students congregating for the bus stop, 200 students, you have also a business owner who's going to be downsizing even though she's growing. We have all of these host of issues. Why can't they be creative enough to find another site? Find another site. If you're so smart and so creative, why can't they find another site? Why are they forcing themselves down our throats? That's what I want to know. And obviously it's rhetorical, so I'm not expecting Brian to answer, but just be creative enough to find another location. You already have a location on Newberry Street. Give opportunities for those who are actually incarcerated to have other spaces. You have one space already that you bought on Newberry Street. Why? And this rush to, and you not being transparent and letting us know that you were going to put your application in before the end of March, and that you would be able to go to the board and get this host agreement was very deceptive and and we had a lack of transparency. There's a whole host of issues of deception and dishonest and unethical practices throughout this whole process, and I'm quite disturbed by it.
All right, well, thank you very much. Kimberly Bellinger, you have your hand raised. Please state your address.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Bellinger. I'm at 177 Dudley Street. I am the business owner of the hair salon, hair station. So my biggest concern is not that, like the other person said, it's not that I'm against the cannabis, but it's so congested around here already. It's like, what's going to happen when these extra 300 people come? And I'm already having problems with parking with my clients. They have to drive around. Sometimes they have to park all the way down by the school building. And that's like a big concern. It's not just me, it's 6 other of us, 6 other hairstylists. So they have clients also. Sometimes then in the wintertime when they start doing street construction, then what's going to happen? So those are my worries about once these other people come and they start taking up parking that all of us need and sometimes can't even park ourselves. It's really like a big headache. And that's what I have to say.
Thank you very much. Are there any individuals who have not previously testified who wish to testify regarding this matter?
I would.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Henderson Headley, 19 Lee Haven Road, Mattapan, Mass. I'd just like to offer my testimony today. Thank you for the time. I've known Solomon Chaudhary for many, many decades, and he's always been an individual who was responsible, dedicated, professional, and sensitive to the communities and where he may have a business. He's certainly very responsible, and I do support his effort. And I'm very confident that should there be any community concerns, that he and his team would provide the necessary tools to mitigate on those issues. I strongly ask for support for him, only because he's not just about making the money, but I've seen him in operation. I've understood his mindset and his need to do the right thing. So I think that he would do a great job. Of course, in any community, there are concerns. There's pros and cons to any situation in this world based on human conditioning. And I strongly believe that should a situation develop, if approved, that Solomon and his team would try their best to understand the community needs and to put profits aside and do their best for the community in terms of problem solving and engagement. So again, I am very supportive of him, only because I've known him long enough. I know his mindset, I know his heart, I know his passion, and I know his drive. Regardless of what he wants to do, he's community oriented to the max and very dedicated to the cause. So for this reason, I offer my support to Solomon Chaudhary and his team. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One last request. Are there any individuals who have not previously testified who wish to testify regarding this application? Seeing no one, as a reminder, the record will be kept open until Wednesday of next week. We greatly appreciate everyone's time today. We appreciate your flexibility with the need to reschedule due to a technological issue last week. Thank you to the chairwoman, the commissioners, the applicants, and everyone who came to testify today. The board will take this matter under advisement and we'll be voting on this next week. Thank you very much.